Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm so sorry it's been a while since I uploaded my introduction video. First of all, my name is Nicole, boss here Hinkle, and welcome. I'm finally able to start working on my true crime series and really dive deep into this passion of mine. It is the first video of many out of my series. I'm not sure what to call it. Maybe once I get a bunch of subscribers and people watching me, you guys can kind of help me come up with a name for this. Pull out like the most important cases from each state and bring recognition to them. And I've got inspiration from Kendall Ray for doing these kind of things. She does an excellent job and I really strive to be like her. She's amazing. How she gets people to just basically get up off their ass and start, looking at these cases again and doing something about this stuff. And I'm sorry guys for this ratting as the hair. It's been raining and I have naturally curly hair and it is just kind of doing its own thing here. Hey, look crazy today. I'm sure my curly hair sisters out there knows what it's like when curly hair meets the rain. This is what happens. Nightmare. Anyway, today's case is about Skylar Neese. It happened in West Virginia, and of course I'm from West Virginia. I've lived here most of my life, even though I was born in Virginia. This took place in Morgantown, West Virginia. Skylar Neese was born February 10th, 1996 in Morgantown, West Virginia to her parents Mary and Dave Neese. She was their only child. I'm going to kind of bounce around a little bit. Please don't be hard on me. This is my first case that I'm covering, so just bear with me. Hopefully I make this make sense. So just bear with me, guys. In 2010-2011, Skylar was a 16-year-old student at University High in Morgantown, West Virginia. She was an extremely bright student. She was, from what I found and read, that she was usually always on the A honor roll. People said that she was so friendly and really a go-to person and that they all knew that she had an extremely bright future ahead of her. According to her parents, she wanted to be a criminal lawyer. She also had an after-school job at Wendy's. And from what I've read and saw, everybody said that she loved her job at Wendy's and she never missed a shift. She was very reliable and dependable. So basically when Skylar wasn't working, she was just like all of us were when we were 16. She was hanging out with friends, having fun. Since she was an only child, friends were very special to her. Going back, when Skylar was 8 years old, she met another little girl. Her name was Sheila Eddy. The two were immediate BFFs, like thick as thieves. They remained best friends until I believe Sheila Eddy moved away because of a divorce, but I'm not 100%. I might have to do a part 2 on this once I can dig into this case more. Even when they did separate because of Sheila moving, they still missed each other greatly. I believe they saw each other. I believe Sheila still stayed with Skylar and she still talked to her basically every night on the phone. So fast forward back to high school. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I promise this will make sense in the end. High school came and Skylar started her freshman year at University High. Eventually, Sheila somehow talked her mom into letting her attend University High with Skylar. She got to move back to Morgantown and join Skylar, and they were so happy and so excited to finally be attending high school together. So with high school, at least with the high school that I went to, there was a bunch of elementary schools and we all joined together to become a high school. They met another girl, which along with others, but this girl was really special. Her name was Rachel Shove, and she joined their best friend group. 3-way relationships usually are nothing but drama. At least from what I know, I have had, friendships with more than one person, and it has just been nothing but drama, honey, the whole time. Because one can't be friends without the other, and then one felt left out, and it was just a teetotal mess. So as the girls grew, Sheila was a wilder kind of girl. And I guess Skylar and Rachel weren't really able to do those kind of things. She kind of did what she wanted. She ran around, she partied with college kids, drank, did a little, she was on the wild side. So basically the other two tried to keep up with her. Now Rachel Shove, she came from a very strict Catholic family. Her family wouldn't let her do much of anything. Experience in sneaking out and partying. So whenever Sheila introduced her to all this, she was just like, wow, I never got to experience any of this. So naturally, her and Sheila started to gravitate towards each other. It's like they say, 2 is company, 3's a crowd. So you don't want to find yourself in that mess. Let's fast forward to July 12th, 2012. Skylar got home from work. Okay, she had just finished a long shift at Wendy's. Came in, she kissed her mom, kissed her dad, told him how much she loved them, and said that she was going to go take a shower because she had been working all day. And she said she smelled funky and she just wanted to get the french fry smell off of her. Something just fell again. Okay, I'm going to try my best to finish this. Okay. She told her parents that she was going to take a shower and go to bed. Well, the next day, Dave came home from work, and I think this was around 4 o'clock in the evening, and he knew, or before 4, something like that. All I know is that Skylar's shift was soon to start, and Dave brought the car home for Skylar so she could take it to work, And I guess she was going to have to drop Dave back off at work on the way. Dave walks up to her door and he goes, Skylar, wake up. If you want to take the car, you're going to have to get out of bed, get ready. And he listened. Nothing. So he started to kind of panic. Obviously, his daughter wasn't answering the door. So he went and got a hanger, jimmied the doorknob open. To his horror, his baby girl was not in her bed. Now, me being a parent, I have 3 precious babies, and oh my gosh, if I lose sight of them for 1 minute, you can ask my husband, I am a frantic mess. I am a helicopter mom from hell, baby. Now, I'm telling you, I have to know where my babies are at all times. So I can only imagine what Dave was going through. So immediately, Dave called Mary and said, hey, do you know where Skylar is? And she's like, no. Have you called her friends? So Dave gets off the phone, calls around, calls Sheila, obviously, and calls Rachel. No answer. So he starts blowing up Skylar's phone again. Mary, Skylar's mom, works at I believe she worked at Ruby Memorial Hospital, and Dave worked as an assembler at Walmart. So they did everything they could to give Skylar the most beautiful, blessed life. And from what I've read and saw, they did a great and amazing job doing that. So Dave calls Mary back again and says, I can't find her. What do we do? So Mary rushes home from work, and she said, don't worry. They knew that her shift was getting ready to start at Wendy's at 4. And they said, okay, we'll wait and see if she shows up. Make sure she's there. And then we'll go from there. A little before 4, Wendy's calls them. They don't even get a chance to call Wendy's to see if she's made it there to clock in. No Skylar. As they are hanging up from Wendy's, they realize that something is seriously wrong because she never missed work. She took her job very serious. So anyway, Mary was like, Dave, we've got to call the police.
Police. I have a daughter that's 16 years old. Apparently she snuck out of her room last night and she hasn't been seen since. None of her friends can get a hold of her. I can't find her.
Hey, what's her name?
Skylar Neese.
As soon as Dave gets done contacting the police, Mary gets a phone call from Sheila, and she says, I have to tell you the truth. And she goes, the truth about what? She said, about what happened last night. And she said, well, what truth? And she proceeded to tell her that they had snuck out. Her, Skylar, and Rachel had snuck out and rode around Morgantown and had Skylar back home by, I believe it was 11:30. Sheila said that Skylar insisted that they drop her off at the end of the block so that way they didn't wake up Mary and Dave whenever she was climbing back in the window. And I forgot to mention, whenever Dave was trying to wake up Skylar, once he realized that she wasn't in her room, he walked around to the back of their apartment building, and he saw where there was Skylar's makeup bench was down below, or it was stacked below the window, so she could boost herself back up into the window. And also the screen was missing. And I believe they found the screen in her closet, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to include, like, when I do more research, I can include that in the part 2. So Mary believed that maybe someone else had abducted her from point A to point B. So Mary remembers that they have security cameras. The police show up and they go and review the security footage. And they're sitting there and they're watching. And then, to their horror but kind of relief, they see their baby girl walking out. And I'm going to show that in a clip here in a second. Show their baby girl walking out and getting into this unknown vehicle.
The surveillance camera, intended to capture intruders, deepens the mystery. It reveals this grainy image of that night. A car pulls up at 12:30 a.m. That's 30 minutes after Sheila says she dropped Skylar back near home. Minutes later, Skylar is seen sneaking out of the house. She slips into the car and disappears.
What were you thinking when you saw her head flash on that screen and she's walking to that vehicle?
For a second, I felt relief, because at least I know she didn't get abducted or anything, you know.
And it wasn't like she was pushed in. She willingly got in the car.
So now Mary and Dave are piecing all this information together. The screen, the bench, Sheila calling and saying that they had snuck out and then she dropped her off at the end of the block. You know, immediately they think that she got abducted on her way back home. But then whenever they saw the footage, Mary believed that Skylar had made it back safely and that a second person or persons had picked her up later on. At this moment, I just could not imagine the level of stress and grief and heartache that Mary and Dave was experiencing. Like, I just couldn't even imagine. I would be absolutely freaking out. Then my heart absolutely breaks for them. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. So by this time, it had been almost a full 24 hours since Skylar had been last seen alive. Police officer Jessica Colbank was assigned the case. She immediately started to investigate. Whenever she reviewed the footage, they initially considered Skylar a runaway because, like she stated, they weren't going to waste man hours looking for someone who is just riding around. Personally, I feel like if a parent doesn't know where their child is and they're saying, hey, my child is missing, look for them, I believe that is what should be done. They need to get out there and look for them. If they told me, like, hey, we're not going to help you look for your little girl, I'd be like, oh my God, I would be so freaked out. Let's just say it would take an army to keep me from trying to find my child. Like, I would never stop. I would go till I died to try to find my child. Either they would be found or I would die trying to find them. End of story. So after watching hours of grainy footage, what it appears to be a silver Cobalt or like a 4-door sedan pulls into view. Seconds later, out walks Skylar. She got into the back seat of this person's car. Sheila had said that she dropped off Skylar at 11:30. So people were trying to figure out what this car was doing here at 12:30 a.m. So the police were still questioning who was in this silver car because they believed that Skylar could potentially still be with these people. Since she got into the car willingly, no BOLO was posted. Which BOLO, if someone doesn't know, it means be on lookout. You know, whatever the identity of a suspect is or a certain vehicle, You know, if it's a red clown car, then that's what they're going to be looking for. And it's radioed clear throughout, I believe, several different counties, maybe throughout the whole state. I'm not exactly sure. As all this started, Sheila Eddy was right there. Of course she should be. She's Skylar's best friend. She was upset and comforting Mary and Dave. She acted like she wanted to do as much as she possibly could to help. She helped them go door to door. She helped post missing flyers for Skylar. But as the days passed, still no sign of Skylar. Parents pleaded on local news stations, WBOY, for their daughter to please return home. Mary and Dave said that all of her personal belongings was still there, like her cell phone charger, her contact solution, things that, most teenagers, especially a teenage girl, would take along with them. She didn't even take any of her money or anything, so it just those clues were not adding up. It wasn't making any sense. And Morgan Lawrence, this was Skylar's cousin. She was away at camp for the summer, and she even agreed that it was very unlikely that Skylar ran away. She said that Skylar loved her friends, she loved her family, she loved, work, school, everything, that she just loved life, and it was just that it was unlikely that she ran away. I believe it was on Skylar's birthday or the same birthday month. The community held a candlelight vigil for Skylar. Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy were there, and they should have been, being her best friends. And it's reported that they were there crying their eyes out. And naturally, being best friends, if I lost my best friend, I would have been a mess. So while the community aggrieved and tried to find Skylar, Officer Jessica Colbank, was hard at work. And she is rumored to be one tough cop. She's a go-getter. She does not waste time. She finds the facts and she does what she needs to do. She is amazing, and I have so much respect for her. So she was working on Skylar's case, and she made a promise to Dave and Mary that she would never quit, she would never give up until she figured out what happened to Skylar. She said even if it took her 10 years, she would never stop. So when Officer Colbank started to investigate Skylar's records and checking on the activity on her cell phone, she saw that there was no activity, that Skylar's ATM card had not been used. Also noticed too that she didn't take any items that a typical runaway would take with them, and she was adamant at that point that Skylar had not ran away. So where is Skylar? I mean, people just couldn't figure it out. So the state police got involved at this point. And while the police officers were investigating all these different tips that they had received, for example, of course, that she had ran away with a boyfriend, that there was some kind of party and that there was a drug overdose and the people there got scared and hid her body. And there was also multiple tips that she was being seen all over the U.S. Of course, every time they checked out these tips, they never checked out, and they were never Skylar. Basically, every rumor and every lead came to a dead end. And then that's when they finally got the first big break in the case. Finally. Of course, the last person to be seen with the missing person is a suspect. I'm sorry, my husband's back there playing a game, and he is making all kinds of racket. Like I was saying, usually the last person to be seen with whoever's missing or murdered or something of that nature is usually looked at with great suspicion. So, of course, they kept questioning the girls. They knew that Skylar had been with the girls that night, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf. They kept questioning them over and over. Their stories never varied. The police noticed that it sounded very rehearsed. It was just verbatim, word for word for word. And they said that that's just not how, a typical interrogation goes. Like, yeah, of course, when people are telling the truth, there are major similarities in a story, but not the way that was. Not like that they had wrote a story and had, memorized it, if that makes sense. They were literally like robots, and they're like telling the same story over. So, of course, that was a red flag in the minds of the police officers. So they pulled Rachel and Sheila's cell phone records. And it showed that it didn't stay in Morgantown like they said. Instead, it showed, I believe it was Rachel's cell phone was pinging off a tower somewhere near Blacksburg, Pennsylvania. People were adamant at that point that Rachel and Sheila knew more than what they were saying. And I would have been like, oh, on these girls, like, girls, you better be telling what happened to this little girl. So by this time, the FBI stepped in. They went to University High and started to question the students. And of course, they asked the students about Rachel and Sheila, like how they've been acting, and if they seemed like, something was bothering them, and if they had talked about anything, yada yada. They said that they didn't act weird, they just acted quieter and more secluded, like they were just more into each other. They definitely weren't acting like their normal selves. Of course, Mary and Dave thought the police were wasting their time with Rachel and Sheila. Dave and Mary cared a lot for the girls, especially Sheila. I mean, Sheila and Skylar had known each other since they were 8. Sheila didn't even knock on the door whenever she came over. She just walked on in. She was like a daughter to them. Dave at one point even went to the police and told them to leave the girls alone, that they had been through enough. So whenever the cops would question the girls about this new information that they had found, Rachel, I believe, had admitted, like, oh yeah, we were in I said Blacksburg earlier, it's Blacksville, Pennsylvania. Rachel admitted that they had been there. Of course, that was an immediate red flag to the police. And of course, the next day, Sheila's story had changed also to like, oh yeah, we went to Blacksville, I forgot. So of course they were wondering like why these girls' stories had changed. And anytime someone's stories change, usually they're lying. But there was another big break in the case. These police officers wanted to find out more information about this silver sedan. They went around to different convenience stores, and they found, after going through hours and hours of footage, they finally found at this, I forget which convenience store it was, this silver sedan, the same one that was in the home surveillance footage of Skylar's apartment complex building. It was the same one, and it was heading west towards Blacksville, not somehow, I guess, the way, whatever the directions of the cars in that vicinity, that was the way towards Pennsylvania, and not the way to remain in Morgantown like the girls had said. And they also realized that this silver sedan was Sheila's car, and I believe this was sometime after midnight that this footage had recorded. So they knew also that the times that the girls said were also a lie, that Sheila had told Mary about dropping Skylar off at 11:30. So they knew then that the girls were definitely hiding something. So once word got around in the community that the girls were hiding information, Skylar's parents started to push. They started to post different things on Facebook and social media, things about karma, and just really pushing the girls to talk, like just tell what happened. Like, we just want to, they just want to know what happened to their baby girl. I mean, anybody would want to know what happened to their baby. At one point, they had the girls take a lie detector test. I believe that Sheila had taken her test and she had failed it completely. I'm not sure what the questions were that they asked, but that's just proof there that she is lying, and that she's just such a cocky person that she believed that she could beat a lie detector test. And then Rachel, she was scheduled to take a lie detector test, and whenever she was on her way there, she actually jumped out of her father's vehicle to keep from taking it. Now, if you weren't hiding something or knew something, why would you jump out of a moving vehicle? I mean, I know people talk about it and all that, like, ooh, but when it actually comes to jumping out of a moving vehicle, are you going to do it? Heck no, that's scary. So obviously this little girl was scared to death that the police were going to find out something that they knew. So in November 2012, Rachel was questioned again by the police. Rachel's story then changed. She admitted that they had gone to Blacksville, Pennsylvania. And she said that Skylar was with them, and out of nowhere, Skylar insisted on being let out of the vehicle, which, makes absolutely no sense. Why would this young girl just want to be let out of a vehicle in the middle of nowhere, in the dark, in the middle of the woods, or God who knows where, even along a road? That's insanely creepy. And any of you that haven't been to West Virginia or like around this area, at night it is dark, like black dark out, like pitch black, so black out, like dark black night that you can't see your hand in front of your face. So that just made absolutely no sense. And of course, the next day Sheila's story matched Rachel's, and this was just a continuing thing. Like it just, one thing would catch up to them, and then their story would change. And like I said, always a red flag, and the police knew that they knew something that they weren't saying. This made the police look at them even harder. So get this, guys. One evening, I guess the stress was getting to Rachel about all the secrets and everything that she knew. On this evening, 911 gets an unexpected phone call. It's Rachel's mom. And in the background, you can hear Rachel screaming, no. Rachel's mom can't control her. And I'm going to insert the clip so you can hear it for yourself. Rachel was coming undone. Apparently, whatever had happened or whatever she knew was weighing on her soul. And she just couldn't take it anymore.
Mon County 911, we have an emergency.
I have an issue with a 16-year-old daughter of mine. We can't control her anymore.
And then, on December 28th, Rachel apparently snapped. Her upset mother called the police.
She's shooting us, she's screaming, she's running through the neighborhood. Give me the phone. Like, okay, no, this is over, this is over. My husband's trying to contain her. Please hurry.
Right after the 911 call was placed, police arrived and took Rachel to a mental hospital called Chestnut Ridge in Morgantown, West Virginia. And what all happened there, nobody knows. Information was never released what happened. But all we do know is that I believe it was 2 days after she had been released from Chestnut Ridge that she wanted to meet with one of the state police officers at her attorney's office. Rachel was ready to tell what happened to Skylar. So the police sat her down and they said, tell us what happened. Like, was there an overdose? Or something happen with a boyfriend? Something like that, of that nature. And she looked him in the eye and she said, we stabbed her. The state trooper said that they were speechless. Rachel pulled up a wastebasket and said that she was going to be sick. The police officers were absolutely speechless at this point. And they looked at her and they said, what do you mean that you stabbed her? He said that, yes, her and Sheila had stabbed her and how they had planned it for months. And here, it was all an act. The upset best friends, it was just an act. They had killed Skylar. They actually came up with the idea in science class. In fact, people overheard them, and this is hindsight, how people always, say that they knew this and knew that. I wish some of these people would have came forward within these months of hearing them discussing this, and maybe not, they could have prevented this from happening. Like, if I would have heard someone saying that they were going to kill XYZ, best believe, I don't believe in, whatever, but when it comes to someone's life, a life is a life. You don't sleep on no one's life like that. And not saying that those people were responsible or anything, but you never know. Something could have been done. In science class, they decided the night of July 5th, 2012 would be the best time. Rachel said that she wanted to get this done before church camp. Can you imagine? Church camp. Wanted to kill her best friend before she goes to church camp. Freak. Unreal. That afternoon, Rachel took her father's shovel and Sheila went and got the knives from her mother's kitchen. and they concealed them in hoodie pockets. Okay, they also brought along bleach, wipes, change of clothes. And they called an unexpected Skylar and said that they were on their way to pick her up. Now, everything was starting to make sense. All of the clues were coming together. Rachel began to explain the horrific events of that night. How they had picked up Skylar and drove to an area called Brave on the outskirts of Blacksville, Pennsylvania. They had been to this area before, so Skylar, I guess, wasn't, freaked out, or like this wasn't anything unusual. I know that the girls had, according to rumor, the girls had started to distance themselves from Skylar. Like, for instance, some of the students said that Rachel and Sheila would come to school dressed alike, and then Skylar would be like, gee, thanks guys, like, why didn't you include me? And, they would say, oh, it's just a coincidence or whatever, and that kind of thing. And so they started to see that this three's a crowd thing was definitely starting to show. They drove down this dark gravel road. Just imagine how scary this was. 3 girls on a dark, scary road alone at night. They all got out to smoke a little marijuana, and they were sitting in the grass, and they told Skylar that they forgot their lighter. So Skylar got up to go back to the car. She said, I'll get it. And as she was walking back to the car, the girls looked at each other and they said, on 3. So they counted down. 1, 2, 3. And then Rachel and Sheila began to stab their best friend Skylar in the back. And I've heard different variations of this part, but the one that I've heard the most is that I guess when Rachel and Sheila were stabbing Skylar, apparently Skylar got the knife away from Rachel, and stabbed Rachel in the leg. Skylar was able to get up and run, but Rachel got up and chased her and knocked her back down. And at that time, Sheila took over the attack. Rachel stopped stabbing Skylar, and I believe that Sheila had stopped counting by the time she got to, it was either 50 or 60 stabs. It's just unreal to me. Like, how could you do that to someone that you had known your whole life, that was like your family, your sister? Like, that's just insane to me. Like, in my eyes, this girl absolutely was a psychopath. Like, I don't believe that it had anything to do with any of these reasons I'm getting ready to explain to you why they did this. So the police started to look into this. Of course, whenever they were in the interview, they asked Rachel why this happened, and they said, we just didn't like her. And they said, what do you mean you didn't like her? And they said, we just didn't want to be your friend anymore, which is absolutely absurd. I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe that there was a lot more to it. I believe that Rachel and Sheila had, like I was going to tell you guys how they were rumored to be hooking up with each other. They had a love affair going on. Of course, Skylar knew this, and Skylar had actually wrote this in real time in her diary, how she had been in a room with Rachel and Sheila, and they were all drinking. Sheila started to do the dirty with each other and doing everything imaginable to each other, and how Skylar couldn't leave because then Rachel's mom would know that they had been drinking. Apparently they didn't care that Skylar had known, because they did it right in front of her. So it just, a lot of things don't make sense, and this is one of these cases that it's just up in the air. And I wish so much, when I get to sentencing, I'll explain, I just wish so much they would have included this in the plea agreement, that, they would have told exactly why this happened. It's truly sad. I wish they did that with every plea agreement. Like, hey, you don't want to get the death penalty, or you want this or you want that, then you're going to tell what happened or where this person is, or XYZ. Sheila, at this point, was unaware that Rachel had told. So they put a wire on Rachel, and to try to set up Sheila, to try to get Sheila to talk. And apparently Sheila didn't take the bait. They went and got different, warrants, and, they wanted to search Sheila and Rachel's houses and cars. When they did that, they found in Sheila's car traces of blood, and then, of course, it came back to be Skylar's. At this point, had evidence tying them to Skylar's murder, so they went and arrested Sheila at the Cracker Barrel. She was eating lunch with her mother. So the girls took a plea agreement. Rachel was charged with second-degree murder. She was supposed to get 20 years, but the parents and community pushed. They wanted 40 years for Rachel, and the judge, I believe, just kind of met him in the middle and gave Rachel 30 years in prison. Sheila, she was charged with first-degree murder, and she received a life in prison, and that is with mercy in West Virginia. And I'm going to have to look up that law a little bit more. It's kind of confusing to me. So I'm not sure if, like, with mercy, if that means that she comes up for parole after a while or what. But I'll have to do in my part 2 of this, whenever I can find more about the sentencing guidelines and things, I will definitely update you guys about it. It's this trial, like, I feel like this was totally unfair. Like, and they almost looked at Rachel like she was a hero. Like, without Rachel, this would have never been solved. No, the heat was getting to Rachel. Everything was coming down on her, and she knew that the police were closing in. And yeah, I'm grateful that she did come forward and told the truth. I mean, apparently Sheila was never going to do it. I mean, it's just, guys, I just don't even know what to say. I feel so bad for Mary and Dave. Like, God love them. My heart is with you guys. I'm going to list my email below. And thank you for joining me. I'm going to try to put up as many videos as I can. Like I said, I want to cover each state and, like, cover their most, popular cases. And then also I want to bring to light, different unsolved cases. Because no matter how big or small a case is a person and they deserve justice. Like I said, Kendall Ray is just amazing at that. And then Stephanie Harlow, the way she goes into depth on cases. And Bailey Sarian, I just love her. But thanks for joining me, guys. I'm going to list my information below if you guys want to help me come up with names or whatever for these different series. Please feel free to comment below. All right, my house is chaos, but thank you so much for joining me and watching my video. If you want, you can subscribe. I'm not going to be like one of them people like subscribe, like. Like, if you guys want to subscribe to me, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, and I'm not even sure what that does, really, but thank you, and au revoir.